Thanksgiving 2022. Let me know if my sound is okay. We're not going to do this out in the barn. It's loud out there. There's combines going by, so I had everything set up outside, but they're still taking corn off of a couple of fields. So I dragged it all down here into the storage room with all the kettlebells and everything else, and we're going to do it down here. So let's work on our question format today. If you can label them questions or comments, that helps me out a lot because it makes it easier for me to read questions faster. And the more detail you can put in your question, the better it will be. Thank you very much. Can you guys, Colin Clifford says my sound is good. Awesome. Thank you guys. It's much quieter in here than it is out there right now. So we're going to work with what we got. Questions already starting, man. Is there anything we need to talk about first? Upcoming seminars, Thailand, gonna be super cool. We have a whole pile of staffs on order. We're gonna be using 37.5 millimeter staffs because there we go. Because that's what we have available to us over there. We ordered a huge pile. We'll probably break all of them. I'm almost positive we'll break all of them at some point. We ordered them 6 feet long, which is a little longer than we probably need, but that's fine. Over time, they're probably going to get shorter on their own. When people come to a staff seminar, one of the things that we have people do is take wooden staffs. We use a lot of wooden staffs in the beginning because they break. So something like an indestructible cold steel staff, which is one of my favorite advanced training tools, but is a little bit short for a lot of people, is indestructible. So if you mess up and you hit somebody, all the force goes into people. So when we start doing staff training, oftentimes we will buy things like staffs. Oh man, my work clothes look terrible. So that they break, so that force transfers away from people or away from objects. And we will wrap them all in electrical tape. That's an old school axe throwing trick to try to save the handles on your wood handled axes. You wrap them in electrical tape because electrical tape has quite a bit of stretch to it. So we will be wrapping all the staffs up in electrical tape, which gives people a thing to do. It also involves people in the process of their own education, which is part of the entire seminar, is to convince people that they don't need fancy equipment or super fancy instruction or black belt in order to be able to learn the basics of human movement. People have been doing it all throughout human history with sticks that they find lying around. Granted, they did dry those sticks and season those sticks and shape those sticks and everything else like that. But we start with something that's very basic, and we help people learn to take control of their own education by having them physically modify things as part of the curriculum of the course. And that will go on and on and on throughout the entirety of the 5-day training in Thailand. We're using 37.5, so the competition adjustable handles are 35, but the thicker handles get, the stronger they get. So we're gonna pick a little bit oversized, and we'll see if they last a little bit longer or put up with a little bit more stress. We're gonna have seminars coming up. I have an email from a seminar in somebody offering a space for a seminar in Colorado. I just have to get back to it. My apologies. And we're going to continue working. We're going to try and get as much in-person training and stuff going for 2023. Is it 2023 now? It is 2023 now, coming up, as possible. And we're going to start trying to spread them out so that people have access to education and they can come and be a part of a community and learn. That's the whole idea, is that hero's journey that I'm always talking about. Going to seminars and learning something is part of your own individual hero's journey. And you should do it twice a year. Does not have to be my seminar. Could be any seminar. Could be a horseback riding seminar. Could be an archery seminar. Could be a baseball seminar. Could be a football seminar. Could be a public speaking seminar. Could be anything. That's the whole idea. But the idea is that you need to leave where you're at, go someplace. You need to physically travel. That's part of the whole thing. That's part of the experience in your brain. You need to go someplace, not entirely understand what's going to happen. You need to meet people who are there, who are also on their same journey. You guys learn to work with new people, you meet new people, you go places you've never gone, you do things you've never done. It's adventure, it's a journey, and then you go home and you take those skills with you. Hopefully, whatever seminar you sign up for is well designed and is designed to change the way your brain functions forever. But a lot of them are. Seminars have gotten a lot better in the last couple of years. Granted, there are some real not great seminars out there. But the idea is that seminars are part of a larger learning strategy, and they convince people to get back out into the world. An easy goal to set and an easy justification of the use of funds in a time like this, where funds have been more limited for people in the last 2 years because of the events of the world, is that it is educational. I've never really been on a vacation, maybe once. Have I been on like an actual vacation in my life? I can't think of one. I'm sure there's one, maybe one, but I always go on something that's a learning opportunity. Whether it's riding a motorcycle in Morocco, that's a learning opportunity to me, or traveling to see historical sites in Europe. Those are learning opportunities to me. I don't spend a lot of time sitting down and drinking margaritas, although that would be fun sometime. I assume I'll do that when I get older, maybe. All right, let's start at the top. Question from KD. KD asks a lot of questions. Thank you for showing up all the time, KD. Any suggestions how to make a DIY heavy bag using a phone pole, light pole, tree, wrapping and carpet, primarily for hitting with cold steel staff? A great idea. Definitely. If you're going to hit a tree, make sure it's a big one. This is kind of an old school kung fu idea, and you're going to hit horizontally. Make sure, so think about that. There are 4 ways to hit horizontally: right hand high, left hand high, coming from the right shoulder, right hand high, left hand high, coming from the left shoulder. And then all your stepping patterns leading into that. I like this question. This is a good question because this leads us into people discovering or rediscovering what human athleticism really is. So yes, carpet wrapped around a tree as thick as you can get it, or a telephone pole is even better if nobody's going to freak out for you beating the crap out of a telephone pole in your neighborhood. If you're out in the country, it's probably fine. Wrap a bunch of carpet around it, and then I always used to use something like black trucker straps, super heavy rubber trucker straps. You'd get them at Home Depot, you get them anywhere at any automotive place, and you would wrap them around and they S-hook together. That would hold your carpet in place, and then you could change the height of that carpet or put multiple heights of carpet on there, and then make high neck height, make waist height, make knee height, change your height. Are you low to the ground? Is your staff horizontal when you're doing low strikes? And then you can do all of your moving into and out of striking. So instead of just standing there and doing baseball bat swings, the real fun part is when you start doing things like turning around or moving around obstacles and optimizing the number of steps that you take in order to get to a target, because that is footwork. That is agility training. Most of the agility training that people do in the modern world is based around sports. It's based around basketball or football. But the original version of agility training was get to something and hit it, or get away from something that's trying to hit you. Get to something that you hit, get away from something that you hit. Try to move your body away from something that's trying to hit you, or try to move your body towards something that's trying to hit you. Think about those 4 categories. And now turning left, turning right. Most people will find that they don't turn well one way. And then distance covering, 1 step in, 2 steps in, 3 steps in, or fixed distance away from the target, and then try to make your steps bigger to get to the target. So much stuff you can do right there. You can write a whole program, and I have many times, for people just with a cold steel staff and striking something. If you're hitting something rock solid, you're going to get a lot of reverberation. So the idea of wrapping it in carpet is a really good idea, because it takes some of the shock out of your hands. And those cold steel staffs never break. They transfer a lot of force back up into your body. Yeah, great question, KD. So I usually do carpet with trucker straps around it. Telephone poles are basically indestructible. You can hit it forever. You're never going to hurt it. If you're going to do a tree, you probably want it to be 12 inches across so you don't end up beating your tree to death. And you want to wrap it because if you disrupt the layer of the bark on the outside, you could end up killing the tree just from fragmenting its circulation system up and down of fluids. We don't want to do that. We don't want to kill trees. We want more trees. What was the other part of that? Something else. Light pole. Light poles, if they're like concrete, get a little bit more serious. You're going to want to put some type of foam padding inside of the carpet. Otherwise, you're not going to like it very much. Yeah, excellent question, KD. That's a great question. Super fun because it leads us into talking about staff fighting. Staff fighting relates to everything that I do because maces and clubs are versions of attacking and defending. They are the original forms of athleticism that the human body does. And I think of kettlebells like the original versions of work. So I think of defense in the mace club category. So all the movements you work on there, work on your primary defensive and offensive movement patterns. Impossible to mess it up. If you start with a good logical program and go up and wait, you'll get better at it on accident. And then I think of kettlebells like lifting and carrying, like working in the barn, picking up bags of grains, throwing bales of hay, and just turning that itself into a super science that makes it more repeatable and easier for people to learn. But then going back into staff and showing people the original stepping patterns. It's hard to mess it up. Walk to the target, the minimum number of steps, figure out how to hit it as hard as possible, work on it over time, and you'll say, oh, this is exactly how it is. And then you make sure you do every version of the stepping, every leg forward, left leg lead, left hand high, right hand high, different heights. You can write that program forever. It's a fantastic program. And it will explain a lot about what the human body's really meant to do in a very short period of time to people. Great question, KD. Comment. Happy Turkey Day. Thank you, Rip Dime. So I really appreciate it when people label things comment or question so that I can quickly identify things and it makes my brain work a little bit faster and you get less ands and ums. I'm trying to do less ands and ums now, but I have to work on that. That's something I need to work on for myself. KD, video question, another KD question. Would you be able to incorporate some slow motion segments or freeze frames in your videos to help demonstrate your movements along with a voiceover and drawing annotations? KD, I would absolutely love to do that. That requires me to have much better equipment than I currently possess and an actual camera crew. So if you want to do things in slow down or freeze frame, then that means you have to shoot in a higher frame rate. I shoot in 30 frames per second 4K because that's about as much as my computer can handle processing wise. If I tried to shoot in 60 frames per second or 120 frames per second, at 60 frames per second, it becomes twice as much data. I simply don't have the RAM power to do that currently. And if I were to shoot in 120 frames per second to get a really good slowdown, it would be 4 times as much data. Seeing as how YouTube really projects in about 720 or 1080, depending on where you're at and what's going on, what you have it set at, I think. You export for YouTube in H.264, which is a format of export, and it takes all the data that you shoot and it converts it to one type of file. But I would end up with about 16 times more data than I need, and I simply don't have the technical capacity to do that at this time. I would absolutely love to do it, but I don't have the technical capacity to even edit that right now. So I do the best I can with what I have. Funds are limited. I have a lot of family things that need to be taken care of. So I can't spend a bunch of money on that stuff right now because I have to spend money on making sure my family stays alive. So we all pick and choose our battles. In the future, I would love to do exactly what you're saying. I would love to expand the production of all the videos. And maybe in another year, I will make all the videos over again. And every time I make them over again, the explanations get better, the ordering gets better, and eventually we could have slow-mo. If you try to slow-mo 30 frames per second or even stop it, you'll notice there's motion blur. So you have to shoot in that higher frame rate so that you have more data so that it gets crisper. So I would love to do that, but I don't have the capacity to do that. Sorry, KD. Hopefully, you know, in 6 months to a year, I could do something like that. Oh, my bad, guys. Knocking my gimbal. Yeah. Paul Mason, question. What gloves do you recommend for single arm mace outdoor in the winter? I'm Canadian. I've tried some, but they always seem to slip a little bit. Great question. I tend not to actually wear gloves outdoor, but that means you would have to keep all of your equipment inside, take it outside, use it, don't put it down, and then come back in. But I'm not dealing with like Yellowknife Canadian winter. Something that tends to work pretty well for people are mechanics wear gloves. I love mechanics wear gloves, M-Packs. These are the Covert 3s. They fit extremely well and they go on a thing so you can clip them on your belt. Super useful. I don't know why every glove in the world doesn't have that. And they're likely to put up with the stress that you are doing and they fit your hand very closely. You will end up with calluses in weird spots where there are seam lines on your hand. Granted, these gloves are not waterproof nor are they windproof. They are just going to take the sting out of holding on to something that's really, really cold. I have a pair of Duluth mittens that I use, and there are some things like these Magpul gloves, but you're going to burn through these pretty quickly because they have no seams in them, which is really good, but that makes them thinner. They're not doubled up in stress points. So you will go through a pair of gloves. You might go through 2 pair of gloves a winter if you're training that way. There are some heavier ones. I used to train in old cowboy gloves, but they have weird seams in them, like deerskin cowboy gloves, and they will eat up your hands right in this general area. You can see my hand is currently ate up right here and right here. But yeah, if there's really good options for gloves out there, that's what I use. I don't use like a heavy insulated glove because you don't want to, because your hand will start to sweat inside the glove in like 30 seconds. So I tend to stick to something that's leather. The minimum number of seams, especially in the where the finger meets the palm area, if there's a seam there, it's going to eat you alive. So these covert impacts are pretty good because they're pretty flat all the way through the important parts of the hand. The only part that's really rubs is right there, right there. When you're doing like high weight mace swinging or club swinging, you know, and above 30 pounds. But if you go for a long time, it's just going to eat your hands up anyway. So your hands are going to have to get tougher. Which is annoying, especially in some place like Canada where it is legit freezing, very, very cold. But I would take a pair of I wear like Carhartt insulated gloves when I'm setting stuff up. I take them off. I put on something like the Covert M-Packs, like mechanics wear gloves. Some guys wear baseball batters gloves, but also those they will eat up over time. You're just going to go through them. It's a expendable expense is the way I think of it. And once you're done training, you would take the gloves off and you would go back to your insulated gloves. So you're going to have to rock back and forth between gloves, and you're going to have to get some extremely tight fitting leather palm gloves. Batter gloves are something that work very well for most people because they tend to form to your hand pretty well, but it depends on your technique. When you're dropping a weight, if you're doing like a high powered snatch, the glove can bunch right there where your skin normally bunches when people are learning to snatch, and they get those big calluses right across there. Best answer I have for you right now: Covert Impact, Magpul super flat gloves, or Batters gloves. as flatter the possible, and you are going to eat through them. They will be an expendable expense, and you're just going to have to. That's the joy of living someplace cold. Thank you, Paul Mason, for that question. That was a great question, too. Great questions already today, leading in strong. 20 minutes in. Somebody checking in from San Francisco Bay Area. Excellent. San Francisco. Getting weird out there, but getting weird everywhere. Ripdime13. Question. Club grip. Can you speak on the comment about grip on your recent heavy club series? You guys got to be way more specific than that. What do you mean about grip? What about grip? Rip Dime 13, we're going to come back to that question, but I need clarification. When you talk about heavy club swinging or mace swinging, there are two types of grip that we use. Use the bottom of your hand. They tend to call this the ice cream grip, and the OK grip, where you're compressing the top of your hand. A lot of people have a hard time in the beginning because their hand isn't cycling between those two grips. So I've done 3 heavy club swinging videos so far, and they are all about ice cream cone grip, where you are gripping with the lowest part of your hand. If you're doing something like a catch in an inside circle, whenever you swing across the bottom, it is a ice cream cone grip. Whenever you catch, it becomes an OK grip. People will, one of the first things we look at in staff fighting and heavy club swinging and mace swinging is when people decelerate the weight, you will look at their hand and you will see their knuckle out of line with the rest of their knuckles. That means that they're going to get really beat up. They might get bruises on the palm of their hand here on the thumb pad. Because they're not squeezing the top of their hand when they're decelerating the weight. We'll talk more about that as we go through the new heavy club series. In the beginning, I just want people to hold on and lock their elbows. The point of locking their elbows is that if their elbows stay locked, that means they rotated their spine far enough. If one elbow bends, it means they're trying to cheat in some way, and either they're rolling their spine or they're not turning their hips far enough. Not turning your hips far enough is better. Rolling the spine under load is bad. This is one of the reasons that we want people to eventually come to live in-person training, because people who've even been training for 2 years, they're not conscious of what they are doing, and they believe that they are doing it correctly. We all need coaching. I needed coaching. I need coaching at everything. Somebody needs to point at it and tell you what your brain won't see for yourself. And in the beginning of heavy club swinging, it's rotation. People will either move their feet unconsciously. When they're done with a set, they'll start with their feet straight ahead, and when they're done, their feet will be turned out. They moved their feet in order to steal movement from something else. If their elbow is bending at a certain point in the movement, then they are stealing movement from there, overloading one side and maybe doing something weird with their spine. So we're going to keep talking about all that stuff as we go forward, because grip is a huge, huge deal. And the longer you train, the better your grip gets, and the less you have to think about it. I still mess up my hands a lot of times because I do a lot of different stuff, but every sport has a different grip, right? Barbelling has a different grip than like hard style kettlebelling. Hard style kettlebelling is different than soft style kettlebelling. I teach a hybrid grip in kettlebells where the L of the hand goes to the L of the kettlebell. That wasn't taught to me. That's never how it was explained to me. That's how I interpreted it after years of trying to figure out what everybody else was telling me to do. A lot of hard style guys will hold the bell directly in the center of the grip. In the center of the grip, not in the corner of the grip, and that will change the way their hand works. Oftentimes when people catch, they will catch and the bell will slide through their grip and their skin will fold, and it will cause them to get all those calluses in the top part of their hand. Grip changes over time. The more you hold the corner of the kettlebell, in my mind, the sooner the better it's going to get, and the less you're going to eat holes in your hand. When I first started kettlebelling, nobody taught me this stuff. They just said pick it up and hold on to it. And we used to flip and kind of let go of the kettlebell on the way down and re-grip it and catch it in the upper part of our fingers because we were trying to skip moving over this part of our hand because everybody was just getting annihilated. You'd lose chunks out of your hand like once a week. And it became very hard to train because our grip was weird. Barbell grip, is barbell grip over thumb or under thumb? I don't remember. But kettlebell grip, when we grab in the corner, I do thumb over. Some people do it the opposite way and they will do thumb under. I think that's how Olympic lifters do it, if I remember correctly. I don't know. I haven't been in an Olympic lifting gym in 3 years. I mess it up. But grip is very, very specific and important. We'll talk about it forever because it is one of the 8 key components of every sport and every activity. Tom Baker, question. Do you ever use heavy light cycle with club training? I do all the time. Yes. The answer is yes. Let's add some context to this. Heavy light training is where you might alter the weight between workouts in a week. So this is part of the Tetris of training idea, where we stack different programs with different fundamental human skills in a week, and they can move around to work around our modern schedules. So I do, let's say, heavy two-handed club swinging twice a week, and it would be a heavy light cycle. So on one day, I would do a higher level of complexity with a lower weight, and on the other non-consecutive day, I would do a lower level of complexity with a heavier weight. Yeah, higher complexity, lighter weight, heavier weight, lower complexity. Yes, I run heavy light cycles all the time. It's harder for me to explain this to people because even if I write down giant lists, which I have in several programs, people will still not get it. So heavy light cycle is that very simple idea where we can work on the same program at different levels of complexity, but change the weight each day. This allows us to adapt faster. This is a neurological trick that I kind of discovered working with actors. If you make somebody work on a program, and they have coaching, they have me. So every day they come in, they think it's different, even though it's not different. It's a psychological trick where you would work on, say, mill squat, two-handed club programming. You would do, say, level 1, 15 pounds, level 1, 15 pounds, level 1, 15 pounds. When they come in for that workout 4, they don't want to do it. They're bored. So we go to level 2, 15 pounds. And then we go back to level 1. And then so they rock back and forth. They're still working on the exact same ideas and the same movements in different levels of complexity. And then once we get through it, once we finish level 2, then we would go back and we would have level 1 heavy would be 20 pounds and level 3 light would be 15 pounds. And then those alternate. And then that becomes the trick of whenever somebody's tired, they come in and no matter what, it's a positive thing. I'm really tired today. That's fantastic. We're going to do the easy program you already know how to do. We're just going to do it with a heavier weight, but you already know how to do it. So it's easier. If they come in and they're tired, it's the other answer. It's still the same answer. Oh, you're tired? Fantastic. We're going to do the lighter weight. We're just going to make it a little bit more complicated today so you can work on more advanced technique, but slow it down. It's a psychological trick. And we do that with everything. I do it with everything. I do it with fight training. I do heavy light fight training. I do heavy light kettlebells. Everything I do ends up running on a heavy light cycle, especially if I'm coaching it. When I explain it to people, oftentimes when people are learning without a coach in the room, it is easier for them to do level 1 6 times with one weight, and then do level 2 6 times with one weight, and then do level 3 6 times with one weight, and then start over with level 1 again. And then it seems easier because they now have seen the high complexity, then they go back to 20 pounds and it seems easier. So those are two different paths based on what you have coaching wise. You can do it my way if you can self-coach enough to not hurt yourself. caveat. That's the hard part for most people. So normally just the block scheduling works better for people who are training on their own. Once they've got through 3 weights, they can do whatever they want because they've seen all the information. Each level 6 times with 3 weights means that they've seen it. 6 times 3 is 18 plus three levels of complexity. 18 times 3, let's say that's 20 times 3 is 60 minus 2 times 3 is 6. It's 54 times. So they've seen all the information. They're less likely to hurt themselves. They provided an adaptation. If they've done it twice a week, that's 22 weeks. That's half a year. Then they can start running heavy light cycles. So do I run heavy light cycles with clubs? Absolutely. Absolutely. All the time. Every time. I almost always do heavy light cycles in some way. Great question, guys. That was from Tom Baker. Man, Katie's just hammering questions today. You have discussed in detail what you do at the top of a kettlebell swing. Can you discuss a little bit more in detail what you do at the bottom of a swing and on the way down? Yeah. At the top of a swing, stand all the way up. Squeeze your quads, squeeze your glutes, drive your rib cage down, drive your shoulders away from the ears. Those cues are meant to get people to create more tension and stand up taller, straightening the legs. Most people don't straighten the legs when they're learning because most people don't straighten their legs in the modern world because we sit down so much. Running patterns are not great. Not even walking patterns are good. So I spend a lot of time talking about standing so that you can learn to ambulate better so you can ambulate fast, which is running. At the bottom, you absorb force. Usually in the beginning, you inhale at the bottom because you are filling your body with air to make it more rigid. You are pushing the weight back behind you, and the weight should be in direct line with your arm, and it should not be floppy, nor should your wrist be floppy. Did I do towel swing in my kettlebell series video? Did I forget that? Crap. I should have put that in there. I forgot about it. There's so many drills, you forget about them. Yeah, bottom position. Drive your hips back. There are a lot of different schools. So this is a good question because a lot of different schools will talk about this differently. And they will talk about it usually based on the length of the lever, the length of the legs and the spine of the instructor. So with shorter people, because they have shorter levers, it tends to look more like a squat. Really tall people can make it look a lot more like a pure hip hinge with very little knee flexion at the bottom. I tend to teach it directly in the middle of that because I tend to be teaching people who are newer to training. And people can optimize based on their height once they get experience. The reason my swing program is massive, right? It's just a swing program and it goes on for years. And it starts with a very lightweight so people can mess up and not hurt themselves, and they get heavier and heavier weight, and they will diverge towards one of those two things. Shorter levers tends to look more squat style. Taller people tend to do more hip hinge style, and that is a 100% generalization. Everybody can argue with me. And then what they end up doing after that, whether they move towards hard style, whether they move towards Metcon, or whether they move towards competition style, will then determine their swings even more. Soft style guys do the double bounce. I do a lot of double bounce now because I started doing it a couple years ago because it was fun. I haven't done it in years. But I tend to teach hard style because it's the easiest for people to learn fastest. The knees should be behind the line of the toes. Weight should be in the heel. Feet should be pointed straight ahead. Think of it like a box jump. Hip down, spine straight, arms perfectly straight, kettlebell in lines with the arms. Inhale at the bottom, exhale on the way up. Best I can do for that question with this environment. If I had a camera person or a 360 live, I should turn all these into videos. I should turn all these into separate videos. I just need a better camera person. I need more camera people. I need a lot more camera people. Patrick, question. Kettlebell swing clean versus dead clean and the pros and cons of each. Kettlebell swing clean, 100%. 100%. Dead clean. What are you doing? You're mimicking barbell training. Is it cool? Absolutely. Love dead cleans. And you can definitely put them in there. When you do a dead clean, it changes the angle of your hip hinge and stresses your muscles in a different way. So doing a dead clean and then swing clean and then dead clean and then swing clean combines two different joint angle firings on top of each other. But in the beginning, I highly encourage people to do swing cleans. All my programs are written around swing cleans because not putting a kettlebell down is the thing that separates kettlebells from everything else. Barbell training, heavy weight, start from the ground. Clean, power clean, hang clean, squat clean, all versions, but they all are moving straight up and down in that line. So people who do Olympic lifting have incredible vertical jumps. Kettlebelling is different. Kettlebelling, you push the weight back in a swing clean so that you force the hips to load. Your posterior chain, essentially, you're treating it like a rubber band. You're building elastic energy with the weight, and then it's snapping forward. So there are two different joint angles which determine different types of power. You can do whatever you want, but the thing that kettlebells do better than barbell is endurance weightlifting at intermediate weights. If you touch the bell to the ground, that would be the end of a set in competition. When people touch it down, they also tend to compromise the way that their elbow is. They will release and they will flex their elbow and they will start pulling off of the ground in a dead clean with a flexed elbow, which causes people to have joints in their elbow or have joint issues in their elbow, maybe their shoulder, and maybe their back. So swing cleans tend to keep people way more honest and force them into better position on accident. So, which one's better? I like swing clean because it's different than barbell. If you're doing a lot of dead cleans, you're mimicking the lines of barbell. 100% you can do it, right? A lot of guys on it do that. They do a lot of dead clean transitions and they're mimicking that line. They're also not really competition guys. And the question is, what do you want to work on? Life is really long and there's a million things you can do with kettlebells. I can think of 7 paths, right, that you can do with kettlebells. And the longer you go, the more you're going to do all of them. And over time, you will end up doing all of those things. So the Onnit guys, the guys over at Onnit, do a lot of stuff that used to be done at like RKC. It's really more towards strength training and changing a lot of angles. Excellent way to train, especially in your first 5 years of training. So think about working on your 6 basics. So right now I'm writing programs to help people work on the absolute basics, a swing program, a clean and press program, a Turkish get up program. We will have squat programs coming out. Half shot needs more stuff. And then snatch programs. And then after that, you can kind of go towards monster lift programs, which are kind of like the kettlebell version of Olympic lifting. As a strength training idea, as a pure power idea, you have like Metcon, where you can use one bell and change hands as much as you want and combine a bunch of movements in different ways in order to not learn to put the weight down. Absolutely fantastic. You can have double kettlebell pure strength training. You can have alternating training. And then you can have like competition training, which is kind of where everybody will eventually end up, I think, if they do kettlebells for 15 years. In something like competition training, they have a lot of hang cleans. I see a lot of hang cleans from guys, but I don't see as many dead cleans because the hang cleans, they have to learn to rest while still holding weight. There's a bunch of stuff we can talk about in that, but let's give it that short answer. Which is better, dead clean or hang clean? I say hang clean because it's not like what you do with any other implement, and it emphasizes what kettlebells and humans are good at, which is endurance weightlifting. I think I said that right. If I didn't say that right, somebody will tell me. Great questions, guys. Boy, these questions get better every week. Frank Kusia, our judo teacher, jiu-jitsu teacher. Frank, got to get up there and hang out with you at some point. Question: You have talked before about using gloves for training in the cold. Oh, sorry, I already did that one. Sorry, Frank, I already answered that question. Somebody else asked, one from Canada. You're not far from Canada, but yeah, where in Canada? All of Canada's cold. Colin Clifford, sandbag training question. This should be good. What kind of exercise do you recommend for 100 plus sandbag training, 100 pound plus? Any videos or programs planned in the future? Currently doing farm boy strength along with kettlebells and clubs, 1AC clubs. I assume that that's a misspell. It's just kettlebells and clubs, I assume. Farm Boy Strength Program. Let's provide some context for everybody. Farm Boy Strength Program was something I put out during COVID just for free. Very simple idea. Start with a sandbag that's 25% of your body weight. Start with 1 rep every 10 seconds. Start with 3 minutes. Build up to 10 minutes. 1 rep every 10 seconds would be 6 reps per minute. For 10 minutes would be 60 total reps, and then make it 7 reps per minute, then make it 8 reps per minute, build up to 10 reps per minute, which is every 6 seconds. So there are 2 versions of it. One was picking up, shouldering, dropping it straight down in front, and then of course you would pick it up shoulder on the other side. And then the other one was ripping it off the ground, throwing it, turning one way, throwing it and turning the other way. You'll notice that there are 4 turns. You can go right shoulder, turn right, right shoulder, turn left, left shoulder, turn right, left shoulder, turn left. Right? Basic turnaround drills, pick up heavy things, power. Very simple program. Once you got to 1 rep every 6 seconds, 10 reps per minute, 100 reps in 10 minutes, then you were supposed to add weight to the bag and start the whole thing over. Super simple program, absolutely easy to do. Start lighter if you need to, if you have bad dynamics. Over time, it's a farm boy strength program. You get up to half body weight. For me, that's in the 120 pound range. And you can keep going above that if you have the time or you want to keep pushing it. Do it once or twice a week. And you're working on something that makes you very human, picking something up off the ground, getting it to your shoulder, something that's not designed to be lifted. Sandbags are generally not designed to be lifted. They're very much like a bag of grain or bale of hay. And then the throw over version, which is more martial arty, you could call it, because it's that power throw over the back and you do a lot of hip extension to get there. Do I have a program for just sandbags? You could use the slam ball program for sandbags easily. I have a friend who is a Coast Guard guy, Coast Guard Special Forces guy, and he's doing it right now. He's doing it with a rope bag. So the rope that they use is this giant fat manila rope, and they put it in these bags. I have a rope bag somewhere around here. I use them for circus ropes and circus equipment. And so the bag itself, shoving 70 foot of rope in there, makes it 70 pounds. It's about a pound a foot. Heavy rope. And he's doing the whole program with rope. So the slam ball program is designed to be done with odd objects. I did it with slam balls because slam balls are really cool and consistent, and they're very controlled in weight. 35, 40, 45, 50. The problem is they are heavy. Bells of Steel makes some very good, cheaper round sandbags. Last year, I opened some on camera. They sit out in the barn. If I'm out there, I go by and just pick up a 200-pound sandbag or something. Just pick it up, drop it, and go back about work. Yeah, you can use a round sandbag for the slam ball program. I'm working on some ideas for how to make it much more precise and much more affordable. And I am talking about that with a company right now. But eventually, so start running the slam ball program with a sandbag. You'll see it's easy to modify. They're all the same movements. It's odd object lifting. It's a lot of hug squats. If your squats aren't good, they'll get good real fast. And then we're going to turn it into super science once we get the products to support it in place. So yeah, great question. What program can you run? There's 5 levels in that slam ball program. That was actually a 3. We never did slam ball 2. It's still on the list because we're trying to get all this other stuff out. But there's a slam ball 2 and a slam ball 3. It's actually a 15 level program for sandbag or slam ball. Gets a little bonkers. Gets a little bonkers, but it's all natural lifting technique. Think of it like Olympic lifting with odd objects. So with sandbags, to go back and clarify on Colin Clifford's question, what kind of exercises do you recommend for sandbag training? Hug squats, rock bottom, pick up, put down, overhead press, shoulder to shoulder pass, half kneeling pickups, half kneeling pickup to shoulder, half kneeling shoulder press, which is a very martial arty move, which is extremely good for jiu-jitsu players. All that's in the slam ball program. Most of that stuff was already discussed in our slam ball playlist as well that we made like, what, last year? I have no concept of time anymore. Yeah, maybe last year. Last year in the spring, 2021 in the spring, maybe from March. Or was it? I have no clue. Maybe that was 2020? Did I make those videos? I don't remember. But yeah, all those. Pick it up, get it to the shoulder, do squats. Hug squats with sandbags are awful. There's no way out of them. Your core will definitely have to learn to come on. That's why we want you to start with a lightweight, work on your technique, and build up so you don't end up ripping your spine out. Sandbags are heavy. Front-loaded stuff is heavy. Heavy sandbag gets real serious, real fast. Colin Clifford. Gordley 1. Gordley? Like a gourd? Gordley 1. Great question here. How do old folks 60 plus generally respond to kettlebell, club bell, and mace training? Kettlebell, club bell, heavy club, and mace training. Very, very well. You tend to start lighter and you run programs longer. So instead of doing a level, say 6 times, because the old weights, before adjustable bells came out, before we were designing all these solutions for all these problems, you had to do each level with each weight more time to allow people more adaptation. But for the most part, they respond extremely well to it. They respond better than any other type of training because what you're doing is restoring standing structure, breathing patterns, and endurance load. The things that everybody in the world needs. Standing structure. People in the modern world do not stand up well at all. We sit down well, shoulders round, on phone, at computer. It gets worse every year. You'll see kids now that move as bad as 60, 70-year-old people, out of shape people, because they simply never learned to move in the first place, which is horrifying for civilization. So when you teach people in the 60 plus range, nothing really changes. You teach them swings, right? You teach them swings, hip snap, glute endurance, core firing. It's a deadlift position. They're getting down, they're halfway into it getting up, they learn to stand all the way up. Clean and press. Get a weight overhead with one hand. If you try to do 2 hands, most people don't have the mobility. So the one hand program allows people to twist their body very slightly and improve as the kettlebell pulls their shoulder into extension and causes them to stand all the way up, expand their rib cage, and breathe. If there's a better thing than kettlebells, heavy clubs, and mace for any population of any age, I have no clue what it could be, especially in the modern world. Stand up. People, as they age, lose the ability to rotate, they lose the ability to stand up. So, doing single arm club training with an extremely light weight, this is why I'm so big on ADEX, adjustable club and mace system, because you can make it 3.5 pounds. I'm working with somebody now who is 70. The club is 3.5 pounds. Now it's light enough that they can do it. They can focus, they can breathe, they can restore movement. When you restore rotation, you restore ankle movement, knee movement, hip movement, core control, standing up, and breathing. I mean, you solve so many problems at one time. It's nuts. And then mace training, focusing usually on the Mace 360. I have a video that I'm going to make for about this next week. Most people, as they age, lose the ability to extend the shoulder, meaning lift the shoulder up. They lose the ability to open the rib cage. Their rib cage is down, their body is rounded. So we've been using the long cold steel baseball bats because they're extremely light for people who've had shoulder issues and aren't standing up, and we let them work on Mace 360 because the long lever still provides torque and traction. And you see every week people standing back up and moving their shoulder and their pain going away, starting to go away within weeks. I mean, very, very, very quickly. Granted, if you use a weight too heavy, or the coach sucks, or the information is bad, everything is bad for any population. People who've had more injuries, people above 60, have lived a life. Therefore, they tend to have what we call a cumulative injury cycle, where they were tough. They hurt something, they kept going to work because they had to provide for their family. They shifted to one side, they overused that got hurt, they shifted again, and they kept going to work. This is what I see the most in the older populations, is that they stacked up so many injuries and shifted so many times that it takes a while for their body to restore all the movement, depending on how much scar tissue and everything else is there. But there is no better solution for aging than kettlebells, heavy clubs, and mace. There isn't one. I could not design one. Pilates is not designed to make you stand up and move. Pilates was rehab that was designed in World War I for people who were in beds and couldn't get up. Pilates could be part of a mace strategy, part of a club strategy, part of a kettlebell strategy. But Pilates is essentially rehab, but it's not standing up under load, expanding and contracting the rib cage. Humans use tools. You have to put levers in people's hands, and you have to make them learn to endure again so their skeleton lines up in order to help people. And that could be any population. It's kids, it's high schoolers, it's any athlete you could ever think. I don't know why people aren't talking about this more. They get really weird about this, and they think that there needs to be a more complicated answer, or there needs to be more expensive equipment, which is something I see a lot. The fact that you can just use a stick with a rock at the end is not really appealing to a lot of people who are selling training, because if you go to a Pilates studio, those reformers are $5,000 and the Cadillac is $10,000. So if you walk into a Pilates studio, you see $70,000 worth of equipment. They want you to use that $70,000 worth of equipment. A lot of people aren't so big on just being like, hey, look at this 5-pound stick, and just do these basic patterns and breathe every day, and it will be good, and you will restore movement, and you will stand up better, and you will be in less pain. It's not super popular. Yoga is great, but yoga is missing the heavy club swinging and the mace swinging. Old school yoga from India has mace swinging in it, has versions of kettlebell lifting. They don't look like kettlebells. They have stone collars. They have all kinds of things like that. That's in the original versions of yoga. It's just not taught here. If you do heavy club swinging and mace swinging and you did yoga, you would accidentally create a fantastic program for people as well. I gotta stop bumping that thing. Excellent questions, guys. Man, these are fantastic questions today. Absolutely killing. RSM47. I don't know. It's a great series of numbers. I like the 47 at the end because I love Kalashnikov 47s from a design standpoint. They're one of a brilliant piece of mechanical engineering. So do you take creatine, and if so, what kind? I don't. Although creatine is one of the few things that has a lot of research that actually makes it beneficial, and creatine is super cheap for the most part. I should probably start taking creatine. I just haven't for years, but I'm older now. You know, you can get creatine comes in what, red meat, and what is it, like 1 gram of creatine for per 1 pound of red meat. Most people do not eat enough red meat every day in order to get, so people supplement with creatine at like what, 5-6 grams? Am I saying these numbers right? Somebody will tell me if I'm wrong. 5-6 grams per day, which would be the equivalent of eating 5 or 6 pounds of red meat a day, which people cannot really afford to do, nor do they outputting enough energy to burn that much fuel. Creatine is one of those things that I would actually consider taking. If anybody's got some really good recommendations, I'll put it in the comment section after this live is over, once it's posted. I would love to know. I'd love to know some creatine companies. What are the good ones? I don't really take a lot of supplements because they're so up in the air about what people actually get. So if somebody has a good, reliable creatine company, I would love to hear about it. There are certain things that they actually feed horses. Like they'll feed horses creatine, and the horses get ripped. They know, and there's no placebo effect with animals. Same thing that they do with like conjoint and joint support. They give it to high performance horses and stuff as well, and they move better, objectively better based on movement grading and everything else. I know what the good horse ones are. Maybe I'll just take the horse ones. I should take the horse ones. But somebody tell me, like, what are the good joint supports and creatines? Because I know those work because they work on horses. I would take it. I just don't. I have too much stuff to look up. But if somebody knows a great company, send it to me. Absolutely happy. I should start taking that stuff now. I've hit that point in my life. I need stem cells in my knee super bad. If anybody's got a stem cell recommendation, put it in the comments after this video. There's not much tissue left in my knee after a series of horrific injuries and surgeries. And I do the best I can with training, but eventually I will run into the mechanical limits of what's left inside of my leg. And I stretch it out. I'm stretching it out as long as possible. You know, I don't do high impact running or free running or anything like that anymore. I don't jump rope a lot anymore because it's a lot of impact in a short period of time. But I would love stem cells, creatine, all that stuff. Somebody give me recommendations. Tell me what I need to do so I can look it up and read about it and make sure I'm doing the right thing. But creatine, we definitely know works. Same thing with joint supports. Everett Harden, question. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Everett. Really struggling up to my clean and press. Been doing your clean and press program for months now and have done the full 5-5-4-4-3-3-2-2-1-1 ladder with 20K, but 24K is kicking my butt. Any tips? Absolutely. Buy an adjustable kettlebell and do it with 21. We used to have to do a bunch of tricks. Some people can just make the 4K jumps, but 4K is 8.8 pounds, 2.2 pounds per every 1 kilogram. So a lot of people don't make the jump between 20 and 24 effectively. In the beginning, when kettlebelling first got back to America, they were super expensive. You had 16, 24, and 32, and people just got wrecked because those were massive jumps, right? Those are 17.6 pound jumps between weights. Then we got the 16, the 20, and the 24. It got a lot better. The output for everybody got better, you know. What we really need is the 22, 20, 22, 24. Now you're at a 4.4 pound jump between weights. Impossible to fail. Adjustable competition kettlebell, 1K jump, 2.2 pounds. Now you do 21, you repeat the pattern. You do 22, you repeat the pattern. 23, repeat the pattern. 24, repeat the pattern. Side effect. you get a lot more experience, which means your technique gets way better. You don't struggle bus it, so you don't build in bad technique over time, and it gets good. Side also, thank you, capitalism. Competition adjustable kettlebells are cheap. They're as cheap as the shitty 24K was the first kettlebell I bought. It cost me 300 bucks. It was awful. You can now get these competition adjustable bells for $250 and you get 19 weights. It's insane. So I write a lot of my programs with these things in mind. You can do it with any bells you have, but better equipment yields better results faster across the board in everything, no matter what. The competition adjustable kettlebells, they're making one with my name on it. That's going to be out in January. But get them. There's solved so many problems in training. It's crazy. You can slap on 0.5 kilogram plates. Jay and the Jay from Raven Concealment and the guys from the Discord. There is a Discord that discusses all of these topics. It's down in the comment section below videos. It's run by Grant Gardner. They have 3D printed up some inserts to go inside of the competition adjustable bells, which allow you to add a quarter K. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's everything training should be. So making the jump between 20 and 24K is hard. If you can't get more weights, if you can't get a new kettlebell, then go down to sets of 2, 2, 1, 1 and stack up to 10 sets and then go to 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1 and do that. You have to start that program over. And if it's too hard, if 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1 is too hard, go down to that 2, 2, 1, 1 and start stacking sets. Build your volume. Focus on your good technique because you don't want to build struggle bus bad technique because you'll build in injuries over time. Did I answer that question correctly? Better equipment helps a lot. If you don't have the money for better equipment or if you don't have access to it, dropping it down to 2, 2, 1, 1 and building up a volume cycle of that is better. If you can't do 2, 2, 1, 1, go to 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 without putting the weight down. Set it down, wait a minute, volume cycle that. We can create a solution for any problem. You can take your numbers down to the lowest whole number you can do, which is 1. Can't do fractions. And then 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So now you're doing your 3. And then put it down for a minute and rest, and then volume cycle that. When you get through that, do 2, 2, 1, 1. Volume cycle that. Then you're back to 3, 3, 2, 2, 1, 1. If you want to volume cycle that all the way up to 10, volume cycle it all the way up to 10. Now you're doing 6 reps on each side is 12 reps times 10 sets is 120 total reps. That is close to your total goal of 150 reps. Yeah, and then you do 4, 4, 3, 3, 2, 1, volume cycle that. You can solve any one of these problems. The kettlebell, adjustable kettlebell version is probably faster and less annoying, but you can do it with just a 24K. We can solve any problem through the beautiful application of random numbering. It's not random, it's engineering, but it sounds fun. Man, we got a lot of questions today. I'm not going to get through all these. We're already at 60 minutes. I lost my spot here. Marshall question. Ooh, I love this label. Marshall question. Yeah, Marshall question, training question, club question, kettlebell question. Label these. I love labels. This is going to make my life so much better. Thank you guys for labeling them better or labeling them more clearly for me. Thank you. You've talked about how a single arm club inside and outside circle emulate different punches. Are there any movements that emulate different kicks somehow? They mimic the starting movement pattern of kicks, but not the full kick itself. Not that I know of. I mean, I'm sure that there's something out there. You'll see Taekwondo guys do a lot of stuff with bands, but those I think are still really artificial. So I consider something like a band an artificial modern adaptation, because that type of training couldn't possibly have existed without the technology of rubber vulcanization, which is what, 1910s, 1910s, 1920s? It's got to be older than that, right? When did wellies come around? 1910s? Because of vulcanization. Uh, you can train the movement patterns. I consider like clubs, maces, and kettlebells real because they're a lever that acts in space that you have to control. Are there any club movements that directly mimic kicking patterns? There are not. There are kicking patterns. So there's a whole nother type of training out there about developing hip movement, mobility, and strength for kicking patterns, right? Taekwondo guys are famous for this. They just kind of the way that their sport is judged, like point fighting, makes the training and the hip mobility a little bit weird because they're not focused on creating pure power so much. They're focused on creating a different type of speed because of the way their sport is designed. Kung Fu guys, on the other hand, do something very similar, but with more of a pure power idea in mind. There's a whole series. It's the same way that you would modify like roll series for jujitsu. I can't think of one off the top of my head. KD, great martial question. I can't think of a way to do that with a mace or a club. I know a bunch of other ways to do it, but I can't answer that question properly. Gosh, guys, I'm not going to get through half of these. This is crazy. Man, you guys really, if I don't get to your questions today, please save them and bring them back. These questions are fantastic. Man. Robert Ashford. If I just, no, losing it. If I just started the Strong and Fit program, I assume that's the mill squat program, would you recommend going through it with 3 weights with the 8X before starting the upcoming basis of strength? You don't have to. If you have the 8X, you can jump between these. The mill squat intro to heavy club swinging program that we did for Strong and Fit was always meant to be, that's my short version of club training. It's the short, fast, dirty version. It doesn't have all the planes of movement in there. It doesn't have lunges in there. It doesn't have hunter squats in there because it's very focused. It's very focused. We had 1 day to shoot that. We shot that very limited amount of time because that's the way Strong and Fit does things. When I shoot something, I take 20 days to shoot it. It's just a difference in output, viewership of the material. I don't know how you want to call that. You could go right into, you could do them both. You could heavy light it and go back and forth between the both. So the mill squat program is 20 minutes. It's 5 movements times 3 levels. It's 20 minutes. So it's shorter and it's meant to go up in weight faster. Yes. The basis of strength program is 32 minutes. It's 8 families of movements instead of 5, with 7 levels of complexity instead of 3. It's a slower build, but the overall end product is better. The more you change the directions, you decelerate and you accelerate and you change the directions and you turn your hips, the more you're building in that pure basis of human athletic movement. So if you want to do mill squat with 3 weights, absolutely, then you would probably drop weight down to start basis of strength because it's way longer, 32 minutes versus 20 minutes. So you have to endure a whole extra third, right? A whole extra 50%. Yeah, let's say 20 minutes, divide it by 2, 10 minutes on each side, add 12 minutes. You're going longer, right? It's hard to hold on and to endure that long. So you will have to drop weight. If you were to do, say, the mill squat program with like 45, then I think you would really want to drop down to probably 30 to start basis of strength, which is great. You go up in weight, you go back down, you learn to work for a longer period of time on more complex movements, has an excellent effect on the long-term health and wellness of your tendons and your ligaments. Dropping down, adding more torsion, traction, and direction will make them even stronger when you build it up again. So I'm trying to stack those two programs on top of each other. They were always meant to stack on top of each other so that there's that short version. If you have the 20 minutes a day, right? A lot of guys who work for a living, you wake up, you do your 8 to 12 minutes of warm up, you do your 2-minute transition, 20-minute workout. You're already in the 35, 40-minute range. You got to cool down. The basis of strength is people have that more time. So I used these two ideas when I worked with like actors in Hollywood, because some days they tell you you're going to have an hour and a half to train, and then you really only have 45 minutes to train. So I just jump over to the other program, go up in weight, boom, and lay it all out. It's weird Tetris. I'm trying to design a super system in my head, but excellent question. You can do it with 3 weights, or you can just jump. If you're probably going to need to go down in weight from your mill squat weight to the basis of strength program because it's more complex. Of course, the first 3 levels are simpler. When it gets up into 5, 6, 7, 8, it starts to get a little bit weird. None of the movements are super duper complex. They're all still meant to take place in a small area, the same amount of area you would need for the mill squat program, because that was another design consideration when I wrote the program, is to keep it able to be done in a hotel room. And if there's a lot of foot movement or jumping or anything like that, it can't be done in a hotel room. So I like those programs because clubs are relatively light compared to everything else in the world. And you can throw them in the back of a car and drive across the country or up the romantic road in Germany. And when you stop for the night, you wake up in the morning, you walk out to the car, you pull it into the room, you work out for 40 minutes, you take a shower, you eat some awesome food, you go for a hike in the Bavarian mountains or whatever, then you get back in the car and you go. It's meant to be portable and it's meant to be done in small spaces, but the basis of strength program is the bigger version of it. I'm losing my spot here, guys. Man, God, we're only halfway. We're not even close to halfway through these questions. These are awesome questions today, guys. Thank you so much. This is what I love, is this level of questions, because this means that you're thinking a lot about these questions ahead of time, which makes me very happy. It means that you're all slowly becoming very smart at all of this stuff. Michael Pomerliao. Michelle. Michael. I'm going to go with Michael. What do you think of conventional pushing, push-ups, dips, and pulling? Pull-ups, row movements. Are they useful to train Wildman style? I just want to be strong and generally good at mace. Yes, absolutely. I made a bunch of videos on push-ups in the mountains of California and Pine Mountain Club. That must have been 2021. Push-ups. I have a little dip stand in here. I'll probably do some dips tonight. I love dips. I don't like push-ups anymore. And there's nothing wrong with push-ups. It's just I used to do 500 push-ups a day for like years. And so that's not fun anymore. I'd much rather do long cycle. But push-ups and dips are excellent exercise. They are excellent exercise. Pull-ups and rows, excellent exercise. I used to do 100 pull-ups every day, run 5 miles. It was awesome, right? I love pull-ups. But once again, you get bored doing it eventually. They are excellent exercises. If you have a short period of time, then you can definitely throw that in there. I eventually moved my pull-ups into climbing rope and climbing rope into circus arts because it's an infinite amount of variability like mace in pulling movements. And push-ups, eventually we moved into body flow, which is taking your push-ups and turning them more into the movements and get-ups based on fighting. And then that eventually mutated into what you see now is like animal flow. Push-ups are great. You'll get bored over the course of your life, and then you'll do other stuff. Dips are really cool. There's a bunch of versions of dips that are super fun. Russian dips. A lot of the good equipment to do those things effectively doesn't exist, which I think is hilarious because there's so many companies out there making equipment, and not a lot of them seem to be thinking long term. A lot of it seems to be very short sighted development of equipment, and then people train with what they have, and then their vision becomes less far gazing than it should be. Push-ups should be a means to an end. If I travel or something like that, I'll do push-ups. I'll do 200 push-ups before I leave the hotel room, grab a mace and do 10 minutes of mace, something like that. They are something you should do at points in your life, and you should have gotten really good at them at some point in your life. Do you need to do them every day forever? No. Do I think you should swing mace every day forever? Yes. Do I think you should kettlebell every day forever? Yes. So push-ups are a simple movement that can be done anywhere, that you can train a big group of people and you can get them in generally good shape, but it's not really a long-term thing. It's not standing up. There's no foot movement, there's no hand movement, so there's no ambulatory gait of any type in it. And it's only part of a get up. A push up to me is really part of a burpee, and a burpee is really a more non-contextual version of a sprawl. A sprawl being avoiding being taken down in wrestling or jiu-jitsu. Do I think push-ups are great? Yes. I think mace does a lot more stuff in the same amount of time. I think the clubs do a lot more stuff in the same amount of time. If you spend 20 minutes on push-ups, you could have spent 20 minutes not putting a kettlebell on the ground, and one would have more value than the other. 100% true. So, do I like them? Is there room for it? Absolutely. We've talked about it. I've made videos about it. There's a billion ways you can do it. And if you want a better answer or a more specific answer, put a comment after we post this thing up on YouTube so that those comments stay permanent. The comments that are on here now, I don't get to see in the future much, I don't think. Aaron, I'm just going to start jumping around, guys. If I miss your question, I'm sorry. There's so many questions here and they're so good. I need a whole separate screen to start doing this better. Nerd question. Pythonic Inertia. Love this name. Hi from Ireland. Hello, Pythonic Inertia. Favorite death metal band. I'm a Metallica guy. I know Metallica is not really death metal. Slayer, when played on a violin, is actually my favorite version of death metal. But I don't even know if Slayer counts as death metal anymore, or if that's just considered heavy or speed metal. Death metal itself, not super death metal guy. I was a global underground, right? So when I grew up in the Midwest, I listened to, of course, Metallica. I had no albums other than Metallica because I was not what you might call economically upward. I was very low on the economic class. So my first album ever, I think, was Injustice for All, and then the Black Album, and then I went back and did Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets. And then after that, I started branching out, and it was mostly Seattle sound at that time. So you were into Nirvana, you were into Coal Chamber, right? One of my favorite metal albums ever is the NOLA Down NOLA. When it was a side project of Pantera, stands the test of time, is one of the greatest pieces of music from that type of musician ever, in my mind. Down NOLA. 15 songs on that album. The whole album, inside and out. And then, of course, I was always a big Tool guy. Tool, Anemia, right? Changed the world. White Zombie, changed the world. I think Tool was one of the last true great world-changing bands that influenced everything else. The Zeitgeist doesn't work the same way now that it did in the 90s. Zeitgeist really ended, I think, in about 2007 with the invention of the iPhone, because you got fracturizations of crowds into smaller and smaller subsets of crowds. So like there's never going to be like a Nirvana Teen Spirit ever again, because there's no radio play that operates in the same way. Nobody listens to radio anymore. Whereas the 90s and the early 2000s, everybody in Los Angeles and Hollywood listened to K-Rock. Everybody. If you got on K-Rock, you made it. But that's all gone now. Mostly because all the radio stations got bought up by like what, one or two, three companies. What is it, like iHeartRadio or something? And they put on a lot more commercials, and they kind of homogenized it across the board. And by homogenizing it, they actually destroyed the national zeitgeist. Weird idea, but that's true. Bands I really like. I love Chevelle. I know, I'm that guy. Love Chevelle. And I listen to a lot of retro wave. Yeah. When I was first got to Hollywood, I was Global Underground. I don't even think people know what that means anymore. You'll occasionally run into people in Europe who still remember Global Underground. Global Underground was a group that traveled around the world, and they threw parties, and they flew famous DJs to certain cities and put them up there for like a month. And then they wrote a DJ set based on the feeling of that town or that city. And they were numbered and named by city. And they were always a double 70 minutes. So it was always 140 minutes. So it was really treated more like classical music, symphonic composition than anything else. And I loved that. And I listened to that forever. But it's become impossible to find now. Global Underground. I imagine somebody can still find it. If anybody can find all the Global Undergrounds and send it to me, I would love that. Global Underground, was it number 19? John Digweed, the Mayan Theater, a Wednesday night. Who didn't go to their engineering class on time the next day? No, I did. I was still there. I still got to class on time. And then, yeah, I don't really listen to a lot of death metal. I listen to a lot of metal. I have a friend, his band is called Merzik, and he's great. Tony the Vampire. And he lives out in Hollywood, and they run, and it's very, very interesting music. But that guy's like a musician who can play tons of instruments, and you go to his house and everything's dark and black and red, and he plays piano. It's amazing. But that guy can really compose. But once again, a lot of the composition stuff seems to have been lost in the recent span of time. Man, great questions. These are fun questions. That's a fun question, guys. Let's find another one here. I lost my spot. Chris Buckle, here's a question. Chris Buckle finds outside circles more difficult than inside circles. Is there a reason for that? Absolutely. Standard throwing pattern is inside. Standard. The most common punch in the world is crossbody, which is inside. Throwing a baseball is inside. Throwing a football is inside, right? If you're swinging like a lacrosse stick, it's usually inside, although it very much becomes outside because of the running pattern. Yeah, so most people have a hard time learning outside, which is why we teach it the exact same numbers as inside. Inside dominant hand is the easy one. Outside non-dominant hand is the second easiest one, because they both rotate the same direction, which is the dominant direction that people tend to learn. Outside also moves the weight further away from your spine, your center of mass, so the apparent weight of the club as it swings feels heavier. So oftentimes when I'm coaching single arm club the basics, you will teach inside first, teach outside, work on shield cast, and then after 5 sessions, you will flip it and you will start doing outside first, then shield cast, then inside circle, because now you've done them in order of most difficult to the least difficult. Learning and training are oftentimes not exactly the same. Yeah, I answered that. I don't think I need to say anything more about that. People have donated. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate that. Eventually, we'll make enough money and we'll get a better camera and we'll do slow-mo and get a higher frame rate and more computing power. Comment on question. That's a comment. Thanks, guys, for labeling these. I really appreciate that. That makes it much easier for me to find questions. Hook grip for barbell. You grab your thumb with your fingers. That's it. Yeah, kettlebells. Tends to be that. Barbell tends to be the opposite. But people do different techniques around the world. Different kettlebell guys, competition guys, come up with all kinds of new stuff all the time. That's the whole point. It's like Olympic lifting. It keeps getting better. The numbers that people are putting up now, people could not have even imagined 20 years ago. So training does get better every year. Arun Sharma. Are powders good to stop the damage to hands? I don't know what powders you're talking about. Are you talking about chalk? Very iffy question. Depends on how much sweat is on the inside of your hand. Competition guys often use chalk. But you'll notice they're wearing sweat guards and all kinds of other things that keep sweat out of their hands. I tend to train without that stuff. I tend to train what you might consider like naked, like in powerlifting. If you don't lift with a belt, or Olympic lifting, if you don't lift with a belt, I believe they consider it naked or without shoes. I tend to do everything without extra gear. Occasionally, if it's super hot outside, I will cut off a sock. I've made videos on this and put it on my arm to absorb sweat out of my arms. But chalk doesn't really keep you from getting eaten up. What really keeps your hands from getting eaten up is better technique and a lot of training, which is a terrible answer that people don't like to hear, but that is very, very true. Walking question. I'm jumping around now, guys. If I missed you, I'm sorry. Johan Kaluza. Man, guys, I need a better name. Walking question. I barefoot walk in the forest with a 6K club and a 4K backpack currently, building up to 15 to 30 minutes one way, then adding weight. What is a reasonable goal for the weighted backpack and the club? Man, that is whatever you want it to be. Johan, barefoot walking in the forest, absolutely fantastic. The greener the forest, the better it is. Barefoot walking, true barefoot walking with no moccasin or anything on is really rough in something like the desert because there's a lot of spines and cactus buried in the sand. That's why all the Native American cultures who existed out there wore moccasins. They did do times where they barefoot, but for the most part, people wore moccasins to protect their feet, just putting one layer of leather between your feet. Your foot still moved naturally. Yeah, so true barefoot walking in the forest, it's however much time you have. I would say 30 minutes out, 30 minutes back is more than adequate. And then your pack, take that pack up to, let's say 40 to 50 pounds is a good light setup for people to have enough gear to survive. That is not comfort level gear, and that's not really with food or water. So I would say somewhere in the range of 50 to 70 pounds. There is a reason that the original kettlebell people designed the original competitions with the weights of 24 and 32K, or 52 pounds and 70 pounds, is because if you get really good at enduring with 50 to 70 pounds, you get much better at things like carrying loads while walking. This is something that I don't think anybody else talks about, but if you think about it, it's very crafty. The weight of gear throughout history for a lightly armored soldier, as I understand it, is in that range of 50 to 70 pounds, all the way back to ancient Greece, with bronze chest plates, helmets, spears, bow, quiver, right, and greaves. You're still in that 50 to 70 pound range. So that has stayed very constant throughout history. So humans really, this is another thing, another reason I love kettlebells, because if you get anywhere in between that range of 50 to 70 pounds, you are doing exactly what your body and people for the last at least 5,000 years of recorded history have strived for. They have strived to move with that much weight on faster for longer periods of time. So if you're carrying a mace or a club, I would keep it under, if it's a club, I would keep it under 25 pounds. Once again, because I'm relating that to weapons throughout history. If you're carrying a mace, think 10 to 15 pounds is probably fantastic, but you could carry a 70-pound one if you really wanted to. But to really be able to move effectively in a good human range, I would say 50 to 70-pound pack, 15-pound mace. If you're a female, you might drop that down into the, let's say, 16 to 24K backpack weight, and then water on top of that, you know? So I'm nerdy. I just actually throw all that stuff. I have a backpack. I'll have to dig it out, make a video about it. Just an old Alice frame, and just have a Rubbermaid trash can strapped to it. You got to have the shelf for this to work. And then just like all your stuff, all the basic things that humans would need to survive shoved in the bag. And then you would start adding food on top of that. So what are the things that humans really need to be able to carry to survive? You have your 5 C's of survivability as laid out by Dave Canterbury at the Pathfinder School. And then you have your 10 C's. So I call them the 5 C's of civilization, because if you go to any museum from any culture, you'll see the same 5 things and then the same 10 things. The 5 things are cutting tools, right? So cutting tools are, right, your knife. You have to have a kitchen knife. You have to have a knife to process food. You have to have axes, right? Cutting tools, saws, those are all cutting tools that build civilization. Shovels is a cutting tool used to build civilization. You have to have a combustion source, right? Usually 3 types of combustion source. In the modern context, that would be like your Bic lighter, because they're cheap and they're everywhere. That would be a ferro rod and a magnifying glass. Cover is both your clothing and cover to create cover. So it would be something like tarps. In the ancient world, or at least in North American, that would have been hides, skins, in order to create things like teepees or wigwams, depending on which part of North America you're in. I know that there's a lot of different language from different tribes that define that thing, but think about cover, clothing, and then something actually over your head to create shade or to protect you from the elements. Containers, in a modern context, that's like a stainless steel single-walled water bottle, or gosh, where's mine at? There's a whole pile of them around here. Pots in early America, East Coast context, that would be called a corn boiler. And it was a small individual single-walled cup that people could make a small amount of food in, but still carry. That could also extend into pots, pans, everything like that. If you watch The Lord of the Rings, Samwise Gamgee has a big frying pan on the back of his pack container. And cordage. You have to have some way to assemble things and bind things together. In a modern context, oftentimes that's duct tape and 550 cord, but in every other context in all of human history, that's been rope. So I would start putting all that stuff in a bag and start walking with that stuff, and then start adding food on top of that. If you don't want to put all that stuff in a bag and carry it around, then I would make small sandbag weights that are in the 5-pound range, so you can add and subtract weight in small increments over time. You could do it if you go out 2 or 3 times a week. You could start with the weight that you have and add 1 pound or a half a pound to your bag every time. A lot of ways that you might talk about redneck hikers do this, would be to add a can of food every time, and start adding up. So, but I would get into that 50 to 60 pound range for backpack, and probably into that 15-pound range for mace, because that's heavy. An axe doesn't weigh that much. A bow should be way lighter than that. Spear is way lighter than that. But oftentimes something like firearms, like how much does the N1 weigh from World War II? The American Battle rifle, 308 stripper clip, right? M1 Grand. What was that? 12 pounds? What was a Tommy gun? Tommy gun was also in that range of what, 12 to 15 pounds, depending on manufacturer. So I think getting up into that range is really good. And I think, nerdy answer. Yeah, so that's my answer. Great question. I love that one. That was fun. That allows you to just get super nerdy and really connect a lot of dots about why weights are the weight that they are. Very important. Understanding why you want to lift 24 to 32K, and then understanding why you want to swing clubs at certain weights as well, and then how much weight you would want to carry. And then going out and trying to actually walk distance with that stuff is incredibly important, especially barefoot, because you will reinstitute just everything the humans are supposed to be doing in a short period of time. If you carried a pack out for 30 minutes, you did 30 minutes of mace flow on the beach, and then you walked back 30 minutes barefoot. Talk about a way to reorient the body, the mind, and the brain and the soul all to what humans should be doing. I absolutely love that question. Please give me more awesome questions like that, guys. That one gets, who asked that question? That was a fantastic one. My God. Senile Canuck. Gosh, I love the names. Senile Canuck has commented several times in previous lives. He says, shameless plug. Don't forget to check out Mark's Black Friday discount code on the available pre-order for his new program. Yes, so I don't tend to like to do sales. We're only going to do, I think, one per year because I think that I don't really want to devalue programs, and I've made them as cheap as I can already. And my business manager tells me that I'm an idiot and I need to charge way more money and that I'm bad at business and I'll, never make it and survive. All kinds of stuff. So we're doing a Black Friday sale, 20% discount. We put up a flyer on Instagram, and then we're gonna do a pre-sale on Black Friday for the Basis of Strength program. The guy that I've hired to work with me on that, excellent dude, ended up in the hospital, so we're a little bit behind, but we're really there. So we're gonna pre-sell it just because it was his idea to pre-sell it, because we want to get it. We don't want to drop it on people on Christmas. We want it to be so people can spread out their finance, because it's, I appreciate that. I think everybody appreciates that. If we can figure out how to make everything better, more affordable, and still not lose money, that would be great. Paul Ralph Selleck. M. Raoul Selleck. Sorry, my brain stuff is getting to me. I can only train 2 to 3 times a week if I'm lucky. Would you recommend focusing on less number of moves, swing and clean and press, or progressing slowly on more moves, one hand club, Turkish get up, swing? I would recommend, if you're training 2 days a week, pick one program and get good at it, right? Pick clean and press, pick swing, pick Turkish get up master. Do it for 6 months. 6 months, as long as you can stand to do it, training twice a week, and then jump to another program. Go to Turkish Get Up. All these programs are meant to solve problems, even at 2 days a week. Part of the engineering craziness that goes into designing these is trying to make sure that if you just had 2 days a week and just this program, that it would definitely still provide you mathematically provable results in that amount of time. If you had 3 days a week and you were going to do Turkish get up, you could do level 1, level 2, level 1, level 2, level 1, level 2, and you could jump levels and it would work out. Turkish get up master program does stand alone as a very complete idea of a program. You pick up weights off the ground, you put them overhead, you rotate your core, you get up and down off of the ground. It's all time controlled. You repeat the program. If you got through all 5 levels with 3 weights, you'd be killing it. But they are designed, if you only had 3 days a week, you could just go level 1, level 2, level 3, right? You could jump around and just track which level you have done with which weight. And then whichever one, if you come and you go, I don't want to do level 2 today, do level 4 today with a lightweight. Yeah, the programs are designed that way. But it's better to probably, if you're only training 3 days a week, to do something like a time under tension program because they're consistent in time. Yeah, consistent in time. The Turkish Get Up program is always 30 minutes plus warm up plus cool down. It's predictable. If you start jumping like clean and press, gets longer and shorter based on how many sets you're doing. So it might mess with the way you want to do the program because the variable amount of time might change the way you view your available time, which might make you less likely to do it. Swing is in the 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, I think. Or yeah, 4 different timing formats. So you could pick one and stick with it so that it's predictable. Excellent question. Question. Do you think hand grippers are worth it? Pavel talks about them with Rogan. We're talking about like Captains of Crush hand strength things. I don't think they're worth it. I'm too lazy. I have shit to do. Everything I do is grip. Are they cool? Absolutely. Is strength directly linked to how long you live? Absolutely. Stronger grip, longer life. 100%. No questions about that. Clubs, grip, right? But not pure strength grip, not closing your grip for one time, 360s for 10 minutes. Your hand changes, all the muscles move. 10 minutes of mills. Ice cream cone, okay. Ice cream cone, okay. Your hand is changing all the time. I used to do aerial. It was all climbing rope or trapeze. It's all grip. Everything I do is grip. The thing that used to limit me in training more than anything was grip, because your hands were so fried that you'd have to, push them open to straighten them back out and straighten them out. So do I think the grip trainers are worth it? Sure, if you drive a lot, if you're sitting in the car or on the subway and you just want to crush your grip and hold it, and stare at people or something in traffic next to you, sure, love it. Would I go out of my way to buy them or carry them around with me? No, I wouldn't. But that could be my fault. Maybe that's why I'm not the best athlete. Maybe if I used Captain's Crush, I would be better. I just don't. I don't have that much time. Once again, if I hold on to this thing for 5 minutes, why didn't I just do kettlebell cleans for 5 minutes? Excellent questions, guys. Thank you so much. I lost my spot again. Jacob Sokolowski. Jacob Sokolowski. Excellent names, guys. Love these names. You always seem to underline having your feet pointed forward when working with kettlebells in most exercises. But for me, it's very awkward and unnatural to do that. How important is it? I advocate it in single arm kettlebelling a lot, because single arm kettlebelling is a natural stance. Something like double long cycle or competition is different. Because you're using 2 bells, your feet have to be further apart. Things can happen with your feet. If you are standing normally, your feet should be pointed straight ahead for the most part, right? Because when you run, your feet should be pointed straight ahead. If you're running with your feet turned out, things go bad. This is why ballerinas are considered clumsy, is because they train turnout and they train on level ground. And when you ask them to run, they don't get rid of the point and drag and turnout, and they fall on their face, right? Awkward teenage ballerinas. It's happens so often that it's, what do you call it? A joke? A meme? What's the word for it? Everybody knows about it. People should generally point their feet straight ahead. Granted, conditions usually in the Western world, sitting in chairs and doing all kinds of other stuff, tend to have people turn out. You will read about this. I read an article about this in Backwoodsman, which is an extremely weird magazine about like backcountry stuff. And I read a whole article about this. I talk about this a lot, but it's always interesting when you see somebody from an entirely different field talk about it. One of the ways when Europeans first came to North America, and you could tell the difference because Europeans quickly got rid of their big stupid shoes because they didn't work. Those were designed for cobblestone streets. They didn't work in the forest for long distance movement and work in the forest. So they started wearing moccasins just like the Native Americans did. And they learned that technique from Native American tribes. And they would wear Western shirts, but they would still wear breech clouts and leggings, deerskin leggings, because they weren't moving on trail because there were no trails. There was mostly off trail. So you protected your lower leg. So it's kind of the opposite of shorts. And they wore moccasins. Their foot could feel the ground. They had natural foot movement again. You could tell the difference between natives and Europeans in moccasins based on turnout, because Europeans still did a lot of European stuff and still sat at tables and stuff, whereas native populations tended to not do that. So native populations all walked with their feet pointed straight ahead. And you could see that when you looked at the ground. You could see who did it, and you could say, this is a group of natives moving through the forest this way. And you could see this is Europeans moving through the forest this way because of the turnout, the angle of their foot. Do I think pointing your feet straight ahead is pretty important? Yeah. Do I think you should train it? Absolutely. If you have bad knees, bad ankles, collapsed arches, if you're not a ballerina and you don't, turning out isn't specifically a part of your sport, I think that you should focus on pointing your feet straight ahead for single arm clean and press, for single arm snatch, for two-handed club, for single arm club, and for most of your basic Mace 360s. I think if you put your feet on the ground and you learn inside circles, outside circles, and shield casting, you go up through 3 weights and you point your feet straight ahead, that turnout basically disappears. I know because I train people with it all the time. Training models. Models tend to wear high heels and they tend to turn out because it looks good on camera. So they always tell me that that's just the way they stand. I always tell them that's not true. And in about 3 months, all their back pain, knee pain, and everything else has gone away because they pointed their feet straight ahead. Their arches started to fire and they started lengthening the back of their leg again by rotating without moving their feet. They extended, they lengthened their calves, they lengthened their hamstrings, they reestablished their back, they drove the rib cage down, they did all the things that hot girls don't do, and the problems go away. I do the same thing with actors. I've trained tons of actors, bad back, bad ankle, bad knee, point the feet straight ahead, start over. I think it's important. I think that it's the way the body actually works. People are going to argue with me all day about that, and that's totally fine. People can argue with me. If you don't want to point your feet straight ahead, you don't have to. It just, when you teach something like heavy club swinging and you start doing side swings, I just did 3 videos on this. The first 3 videos in the new heavy club series, point your feet straight ahead, because if you don't, when you do that turn, you do horrible shit to your knee, right where the VMO is. And the heavier the weight gets, the worse it gets. So I think that people should generally point their feet straight ahead, not all the time, but in certain types of training to reestablish the movement of the ankle, knee, hip, arch of the foot, back, and spine. I think that that's important. I think that people should walk with their feet pointed straight ahead. And I think people should run with their feet pointed straight ahead. And I think the more that they turn out, usually the more predictable problems that they will have. So do however you want. It feels unnatural to people in the beginning because their body has adapted. You have to get it to adapt back to the way to this other idea. It's not that ballet is bad or anything like that. It's just that if you mess up ballet and the arches collapse, everything goes to shit. Trained a couple of those people too. Man, we've been killing it today. We're going to do a full 2 hours here, guys. We're almost there. We're going to do a couple more. These have been fantastic questions. Theo Stavrianos. What do you suggest for people with scoliosis? I suggest you do everything that I tell you to do. I suggest you do your swing program, your clean and press program, your Turkish Get Up Master program, your mill squat program, your Basics of Strength program. Most people who have scoliosis can fix a ton of that by reestablishing basic human movement patterns. And you'll see a lot of research on this. The guys from Functional Patterns do this. They just do it with a lot more expensive equipment. By getting the body back to rotating, stabilizing, and getting everything to work, you can drag that scoliosis back towards the center. It's not fast, but it does. I've seen it work several times. The same way I've seen people with flat feet not have flat feet after a year. I've seen scoliosis solve to like 95%. Sometimes that will have to be combined with something like body work or acupuncture in the process. So people have to start, they have to point their feet straight ahead. Otherwise it doesn't work at all. They have to work on all of those programs with at least 3 to 5 weights, and over time it will work out. Probably the most important thing is the two-handed club and the single-handed club progressions for scoliosis. And then I would say clean and press, but usually people have to go through swings to get to the clean and press. Otherwise they don't fully extend one hip or something, depending on which way their body is turned. Yeah, I mean, even slam ball program would help with that. But slam ball program is focused on heavy weights. You should do everything else first and come back to something like slam ball after the spine tends to work its way back towards the center. So stand up, rotate about the vertical axis, scoliosis. Once again, the training that I talk about works for athletes. It works for people who are advanced in age. It works for people who are injured. Put a lot of thought into designing what needs to be there and why. So nothing we do is pointless. Everything is pointful. Pointful, is that a word? Can I use it like that? I think I can. Everything has to have a point specifically. You will notice most of the programs that are currently out focus on single hand and either equal amount of reps or equal amount of time on both sides of the body. And that is very specifically because living in the modern world tends to make people one-sided, and that moves people in weird ways. By balancing out rotations, stability, changing our base of support, we can change the way all the muscles pull on the skeleton by reestablishing their tendon or their length tension relationship. Yeah. So yes. Here's a comment down here from Alamandrax. He tries to point the person, I can't tell if it's male or female, I think it's male, tries to keep feet pointed straight ahead when doing goblet squats. Help me train my ankles. Yes. So think about goblet squats. If you do a bunch of turnout and you take one foot off of the ground, your body will turn towards the foot to line you up with the direction the toe is pointed. So I try to point your generally squat width, shoulder width apart, feet pointed generally straight ahead. Other types of training will move the feet further out wider and turn out to line up the foot with the knee. I'm talking about this much closer stance because I'm making it exactly like a box jump, like a natural stance deadlift, like a natural stance kettlebell swing, like a mace swing. I'm trying to keep a constant base of support for everything, because if you take one foot up off the ground, your base foot will point straight ahead. It doesn't turn out. Nobody stands, except for maybe ballerinas, on one foot with turnout. I've never seen somebody do it and swing away and lift something. Is it possible? Yes. Even if you see a 4-corner balance drill in yoga, the base foot is pointed straight ahead. I think that says a lot. And I think that turnout is something that's very much taught in Western societies, specifically all the way back into the 1880s, because of their version of aesthetic beauty and the 5 positions of ballet, position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, being various versions of turnout or stagger turnout to look good. If you look at pictures of, say, even Eugene Sandow, you will see him in turnout because he is posing to look as good as possible. It's a visual thing, not a functional thing, in my mind. I could be totally wrong. Everybody has their own opinions on these topics. Three-band EQ, talking about Turkish getup. It's hard to go from kneeling to standing while barefoot. Had to start wearing shoes. I bought the zeros. Anything you recommend, or is training with shoes on acceptable? You can train with shoes on. Zeros are great. The question is, why can't you get up while barefoot? What's happening? Is your heel moving? Is your foot turning out? Is your knee collapsing in? Those are all things you have to know. In the Turkish Get Up Mastery Program, we spend a bunch of time in the middle developing half kneeling clean, half kneeling press, half kneeling windmill in order to strengthen the hip and the core in the mid position so that people can work on powering up out of that. So if you can't get up barefoot, you need to ask yourself what's not in line and why is it different when I put shoes on, and back calculate from there. Man, great questions today, guys. Antonio Celentano. Antonio Celentano. Question. While I used to follow volume cycles, I've noticed a huge change when I tried time under tension. I need to master little changes in technique. Was my technique bad or is it normal? So there are 2 different learning strategies. Volume cycle is for people who don't know almost anything, right? Volume cycle, well, it can be used a million ways, but in the beginning volume cycle, you start with, say, 4 sets of 5, and you get 20 reps of experience. The next time you come back, you do the same weight, you do the same number, so the intensity is the same, and you do 5 sets of 5. And then the next time you do 6 sets of 5. So your experience goes from 20 reps on each side to 25 reps on each side to 30 reps on each side. And you're building up more experience each day. And the last set is the important one, because when you go home and you go to sleep, your body goes, well, he required me to do more. So either I need to get stronger or I need to move better. And eventually it'll do one or the other. And then eventually it'll do both. So volume cycles are very much a learning technique or an adaptation technique. Time under tension demands that you already have pretty solid technique, but because time under tension changes the intensity every time. If you do 30 seconds and you do 10 reps, and the next time you do 30 seconds of work and you do 11 reps, you had to move faster. Therefore, you will have to have good technique at the top, good technique at the bottom, and you're going to have to figure out how to do the middle faster. So both of these ideas are trying to force you to become more efficient over time. But time under tension gets real serious because now you also have a speed factor directly inside of it that's trackable. So if you're doing 90-second sets instead of 30-second sets, you're going to have to things are going to change because your technique's going to have to get better, your breathing's going to have to get better, and your cells outputting energy will also have to adapt. So think volume cycles work really well because every day you have to do another set, which means you have to adapt, you have to get better, but the intensity stays the same. So you can go up in weight a bit faster. So if like you're training somebody in a limited period of time, you'll run volume cycles because every workout is harder than the last one, but the intensity stayed the same. Therefore, they will always get adaptation no matter what. And it doesn't seem harder to them. Time under tension can seem really hard to people because if you go from 10 reps in 60 seconds to 25 reps in 60 seconds, how much harder did you have to output energy in order to accomplish that task? So if I'm training people one-on-one, I will use both methods. both methods, and go back and forth between them. And that's the same psychological trick that we talked about earlier with heavy light. So they're gonna get better no matter what, but I'll cycle approaches to keep people from wanting to quit. Man, these have been awesome questions. We are at an hour, we're at 120 minutes. We've been doing this for 2 hours, man. This has been fantastic. This is probably the best live we've ever done. Let's do this one more here. Justin Work, this is a Turkish get up question. It's labeled question, says Turkish get up. I love that. Makes it easy for me to see. My left leg is stronger than my right leg. Same weight. Left leg feels 50% effort, right leg 85% effort. The core part of the movement outside of the legs feels the same. How do I fix? All the step back lunges and the half kneeling stuff. So if you do the Turkish Get Up Master Program, it's all in there. You need to be doing your cleans. You need to be doing your clean and press. You need to be doing your clean step back lunge. You need to be doing your rack step back lunge. You need to be doing your clean press overhead step back lunge. You need to be doing your half kneeling clean. You need to be doing your half kneeling clean and press. You need to be doing your half kneeling. So you need to train the movement, you need to train the top, and you need to train the bottom. So those are all three positions that you can work on to train what's wrong. So something is different in your legs. I had one strong leg for years because of the way I stand, because I had leg braces when I was a little kid. And so I balance this stuff out a lot. Something that often gets left out is the half kneeling positions at the bottom, because it's really hard to do in anything else. You can't really do it in barbell. You can do it in clubs, sort of, but it's really limiting. You can do it in mace, and that would be like half kneeling, two-handed shield cast, mace 360, as long as you don't hit yourself in the leg. Single arm shield cast, both contralateral and ipsilateral, half kneeling clean and press, to work on loading the hip in that compromised position, and then doing something like the clean part, holding on to the kettlebell, forces your spine into the correct spot. You're going to have to balance it out. Do the bad side first. Do a limited number of reps, not to failure, 3 to 5. Go up in weight. Match it with the good side so that they're not getting further apart. They're staying close together. And then you add complexity at the top of the bottom. Clean step back lunge. Clean step back lunge. Clean half kneeling. Step up. Add presses. All these things are forcing you to shift your weight in those positions, because whatever you're doing, you're trying to escape one side. Something has happened and you just have to fix it. And you fix it by doing the top, the bottom, and the middle. And then you change those things in as many ways as possible in a predictable way, so that the stress remains equal on both sides of the body. Yeah. Wow, guys, 122 minutes. We absolutely killed this today. Excellent questions, guys. We got a couple of nerd questions in there. We got a heavy metal question, which I thought was hilarious. I thought we had one more nerd question. Last time we had the great Star Trek question, which was awesome. Yeah, thanks, guys. And we will do this again next week. Thank you, everybody, for showing up on this week of Thanksgiving. I know everybody has things to do and travel to take care of and everything else, and family to accommodate. So thank you very much for coming and being a part of this. And we will endeavor to do this more. Every week, the questions get better, because every week people understand more what they're talking about, and things move on and on and on. That's the idea. Thank you so much. Oh, wait. Question, Picard or Kirk? That's not even a question, man. Come on.